Good evening, members of the board, as we come together to set the agenda for for August the 1st at this particular agenda meeting. Before we get started, we got a couple different presentations. City Director Lance Hines is going to represent the city later this week by sharing a Delta Water Flow Duck Hunters Weekend proclamation. Wanted to make note of that. So thank you, Director Hines, for representing the city in that capacity. We're now going to move into a presentation by the Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority with the current CEO, Greg Ramon, and the newly appointed CEO, Gene Block. But before Gene comes up, I'm going to ask that Greg stays there, and City Director Lance Hines and the Vice Mayor is going to join me at the podium. I said Vice Mayor, but and Vice Mayor Webb. Members of the board and those that are watching online in attendance, we want to take this time and opportunity to recognize a servant leader of the past several years here in the city of Little Rock, as well as the Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority, Greg Ramon. We're grateful for his great work, his consistent commitment to the city, as well as counsel to all of us. He's helped make the city of Little Rock a better one, and we're grateful. Let's give him a round of applause. And that being said, on behalf of the city, we have a token of our appreciation.
Thank you so much. Is it a gold watch, Mayor?
No.
I want to thank everyone. I want to say this has been the absolute best job of my life. And I've got great people that I've worked with, and I will be introducing Gene in a few minutes, but I will say that you guys will be in great hands as we move forward. So, thank you.
Mayor, if y'all want to get a group shot real quick. Really angry if I didn't take this picture, so got it.
Greg, if you would proceed with this brief presentation.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, City Board, Mayor Bruce, City Manager Bruce. I wanted to talk a little bit about not only what we've done recently, but also where we feel the utility should be headed. And keep one thing in mind, that when we bring things to you, we bring things to you in piecemeal. So sometimes you don't get a chance to see what the bigger impact is on things. And I wanted to talk just very briefly. We've done a tremendous job, and I could be here for an hour, and I know you guys don't want that. So I'm making this very short, and I'm really concentrating on the areas where financially we've done a great job at making sure that we control costs. And since 2014, we've refinanced 6 bonds that have saved over $25 million. And again, that the impact on our community and our ratepayers is absolutely important. And so anything we can do to minimize the cost and provide the best service is important. In 2020, when COVID hit, things were somewhat out of control. It was difficult to determine what the future looked like. And I would say that we started seeing lots of folks not paying their water and wastewater bill, and we had some serious concerns. Because the Natural Resources Division owns about half of our loans, we called them up and we said, hey, you got to help. You got to help us. And our comment was, we don't want to default, but we also, is there anything you can do? And in the process of doing that, it's amazing. They were able to give us a deferred principal of about $16.6 million. And again, that was just for asking. So again, one of the things that the utilities always looked at is how do we stretch the dollars? How do we do the things that we need to do to make sure that it's not just a hit on rates? And then just recently, we have worked with ANRD again, and we've got about $170 million that we are going to go from, and keep in mind, with today's high interest rates, we're actually refinancing to a lower rate. So we're going from 2.77% to 2.5, and that's $1.6 million a year savings for 13 years. And I didn't exactly do the math, but I can assure you that's probably close to about a $20 million savings there alone. And our budget's about $30 million, and I bring this part of the slide, and that is that we've had the highest inflation in the last 40 years, but yet in the last 3 years, our crews, our utility has been able to save almost $2 million in O&M cost. Again, it's being mindful of making sure what we spend and what we spend it in the right places. Also want to say that we do have our new solar array system online, and that should save us about $100,000 a year. More importantly, it's the green energy component between this solar system, which when you look at 1.25 megawatts, that basically powers about 250 homes a day. So it's a pretty substantial size. But when you add our biosolid generator at the Fush Creek Water Reclamation Facility, that gives us about a 45% green energy component. So we're doing everything we can to reduce the footprint, and again, using free biogas at the Fush plant allows us to really run that plant with minimal cost to the utility. So those are the things that we've done that I think have done that have produced us, as far as money goes, some great results. We've been in a consent administrative order for about 20 years, and that was one of the things when I started that not only the commission was very concerned about, but the city board was very concerned about. And we've worked really hard to make sure that we're doing everything we can to get out of it. We have spent $270 million in that 20 plus years improving the system. And I could go on and on about why the system needed improvements, but for sake of argument, very many bad pipes in the system created lots of water into the system, which then caused a lot of overflows to occur. But I want to say, in the process of doing so, and this is just one of the projects that we had where we really were thinking outside the box, trying to think strategic. And there were many things that we could have done. We could have added additional basins that would fill up 6-7 times a year. We could have put things at the plant that could only be used 6-7 times a year. We actually went with the first parallel treatment system, and I'm using Region 6, and Region 6 is really the middle of the country. It's the first in the country, in that region, to have this kind of parallel treatment. And the great thing about that is it increased our capacity at the Adams Field plant from 60 million gallon capacity a day to 94 million gallon capacity a day. But even more important than that, it's usable when it's not raining, so that we polish our water even further when it's not during a storm event. Which means that if I put a glass of our effluent and compare that to a glass of drinking water, I think you would have a difficult time determining which one was which. So we've got some great technology that we're working out there. We are going to meet the consent administrative order. It's at the end of this year, and our goal is to do everything we can to prove to the ADEQ that we're doing things and we're doing things right. And then the last thing I want to say is that we have been working with Senator Boozman's office, and we do have an appropriation, or should I say we asked for an appropriation of $32.5 million to expand the Fush Creek Water Reclamation Facility to help the port out. And it is on the senator's priority list. fingers crossed that we have a federal budget coming up soon, and we're hoping to have some really good news with that. So that's my part of it. I do want to say that that we do have a new CEO that's coming on board. I want to say we started off with 40 candidates. It was a nationwide search. From there, we reduced it. It was reduced down to 10 that were going to be interviewed. 10 were interviewed. From there, it was reduced down to 4. And I am absolutely thrilled to say that our internal legal counsel, Gene Block, was the one selected to lead the utility from here on out. So I want to first congratulate Gene, and she also is going to finish the presentation.
Thank you, directors. It's a pleasure to be here today. I know many of you, and I look forward to continuing and building our friendship, but also working with each one of you, directors, Mayor Scott, and City Manager Bruce Moore. So, Greg has talked for a few minutes about what the last 10 years has looked like, last 20 years, including the CAO, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what's ahead, what's next, and our new strategic focus, which is centered around water equity. And you see a long definition here, and I'm not going to read it to you, but I'm going to highlight a few points about what really comprises water equity. It's when all communities have access to clean, safe, affordable water, when they're resilient in the face of floods and climate risks, when communities have a role in decision-making processes, and when the community shares in the economic, social, and environmental benefits of water systems. And in short, our utility really intends to evaluate and embed water equity into all of our departments, operations, and decision-making. We're all probably familiar with the children's book, The Giving Tree, and this is builds off of that. If you look at the slide in the top left corner, you see inequality, and you see the tree leaning to the left, and the little guy on the right has no chance of getting the apples. Moving over to the equality slide, we've given the little guy on the right a ladder, so theoretically he should have a chance at the apples, but with the leaning tree, it's not quite equal yet. So moving into equity, we've given the guy on the right a ladder to enable him to have equal access to the apples, and then with the justice piece, you see that the tree is actually righted. This concept of water equity is something that is prevalent across the country among the water and wastewater industry, and we are seeing it at every level. Starting locally here at Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality, 2019, they added an environmental justice attorney who is still on staff. EPA, and they've done a number of things regarding equity and as a whole, including very recently establishing an Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. We've seen a number of civil engineering firms, including Arcadis, national engineering firms, Arcadis, HDR, adding water equity and social impact practices to their firms. And then I've listed these last two bullet points are some water, wastewater utilities, and you see some of the different programming that they have done focused around water equity, whether that was workforce development or seeking increased minority contractor participation. So these are just a couple of examples, just to give you a flavor of what this is looking like across the country. As we evaluated this and really developed it inside the utility, we realized that our organization has been doing a number of things without even really realizing that we were moving in the right direction. And I'm not going to go over each of these. You can certainly read them, and we're happy to provide this to you. But I'll highlight a few. The procurement vendor portal was established by our procurement director, Amber Yates, in 2021. It's something that we are incredibly proud of. It did not exist before its creation, and it essentially allows small business, minority women-owned businesses to access bid opportunities in one place. So it becomes a one-stop shop where they can see what the bid opportunities are, they can place a bid and go utilize the portal through the entire process. And our utility has partnered with 7 other municipal entities, including Central Arkansas Water, City of Conway, City of Hot Springs, and a handful of others, so that all of their municipal bids are placed on our portal, and we're looking to grow that. Next, I'll talk about the Opportunity Zone, and this was something established by Mayor Scott. And I want to say it's been about 2 or 3 years, and our utility and a handful of other utilities were approached to participate in an Opportunity Zone initiative, and whereby the utilities waived fees in order to spur economic development. To date, you'll see the amount that we have waived, and what we are seeing is, in return, buildings that had been vacant that are now operational and are now producing funds and income. And then the last thing I'll talk about, and I think, and I'll expand on this in a few minutes, is the sewer service line replacement program that was established in 2013, that this body approved in 2013. It's been an incredibly successful program, but I'll share some numbers with you in a few minutes that really led us to realize that we needed to reimagine this program to make it more accessible and to make it more utilized, to increase the utilization. As we discussed this program internally, this new strategic focus, we needed to figure out what would the footprint be. And after some discussion and consideration, we realized there was not a need to reinvent the wheel, that the Opportunity Zone that currently exists, that the city is utilizing through its Opportunity Zone initiatives, was going to be sufficient. And you see that footprint here outlined in green. And so that is the Opportunity Zone that we are also utilizing. And I'll talk in just a moment about how we have rolled this out, but it's really been about a 7-month process internally. And we started by really wanting to get buy-in from our leadership team, the executive team. We went off-site, we did brainstorming, got ideas on what are things that each of them could do in their shop, from engineering to collection system maintenance to HR and finance, all of our departments. What are projects that could be considered and advanced in light of this new strategic focus? And you'll see some of them listed here. We have about 30 pump stations across the city. Some of them needed to be enhanced, whether it was driveway improvements or fencing improvements. These are in our community, they are visible, and our residents should not have to see a fence that is unsightly or have to, see a driveway that is, really needs to be revitalized. This next one, the topsoil for community gardens. Our operations director has been in regular communication with the Dunbar Community Garden, and we're really excited to roll out a composting program. And I've brought a bucket that we'll be providing to residents. You'll see, and we've got our logos, and not only are we going to be providing these, but we are working with the garden to make this a sustainable program so residents can bring their composting bucket, can clean it, et cetera. A raised manhole art project. You see around downtown a number of the electrical boxes that have been beautified through public art. And our environmental affairs director is spearheading a manhole art project. Now, this image that you're seeing is one of our raised manholes. And it's actually in Heineman Park, and we have about 9 raised manholes in that park. So we're going to do a pilot study of this, or a pilot project of this manhole art project in Heineman Park with those raised manholes. And we actually just came out of a senior staff meeting, and we got to see 7 or 8 drawings for artists that have submitted, and I think the painting will begin in the coming weeks. So we're excited about that. Again, neighborhood and community meetings. At the heart of water equity, it's involvement and engagement with the community. You will begin to see, as we have major projects happening across the city, that before we begin those projects, we will be in the community, starting with a community meeting to really answer residents' questions, explain the project, the timeline, et cetera. And ultimately, it's about excellence in customer service for all of our residents across the city. And that also involves empowering our field workers, our field crews who are out in the community to be able to be responsive, more responsive to residents, and to be able to answer their questions and provide the service the excellent service we're aiming to provide. For just a moment, I will talk about the sewer service line replacement program. Again, this was approved in 2013. At that time, it was an incredibly successful program right off the bat. And we had 450 applications, and the average reimbursement cost was about $3,200. And we reimburse up to $3,000. Well, currently, 2022, we looked at the same numbers. We had 282 applications, and the average cost, replacement cost had ballooned to $5,100. And so we are seeing, with inflation, et cetera, the utilization is not where we want it to be. And this program is really a win-win. It's a win for the homeowner who is able to replace their service line and, prevent backups, et cetera. And it's a win for the utility because it is addressing inflow and infiltration into our system. So this is a program. We have a committee of about 12 individuals from across our utility, utility that has worked to really reimagine this, and I suspect we will be bringing this to you in the coming months as we finalize it. And I mentioned that we really spent a lot of time in rolling this out, and it's important to us that every level of our organization, every employee, every department really understands that this is a new strategic focus for the organization. And you see how that rollout occurred. It included meeting with the mayor to discuss this with him, meeting with our commissioners and doing a work session with them. And our next step, now that we've shared this with you, is to unveil it on our website, as well as to develop partnerships with community-focused organizations. And finally, I want to share with you our new logo and tagline, One Water, One Little Rock, reshaping outcomes and reclaiming water for all residents. This is not replacing our utility logo. This is the tagline and logo for this new strategic focus. For the last 20 years, we've had a tagline and logo of I'm having Project Renew. I had a brain freeze for a moment. And you will see that on our vehicles, you saw that on our hard hats, et cetera. As we reach the end of the CAO, we are moving away from Project Renew towards this new logo and tagline, and you will see it on our vehicles and hard hats, et cetera. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Jean, we're definitely grateful for you and your leadership alongside Greg and the entire team as you all focus on One Water, One Little Rock.
Thank you.
Director Hines.
Thank you. First, Jean, congratulations on your selection.
Thank you.
It was good being involved in the process, just on a little different side. But I'd also like to say something to Greg. Greg, come up to the microphone. So Greg, when most of my directors that I serve on the board with that were here before I got here know how I ended up as the liaison to Little Rock Water Reclamation. And you came in at a rather tumultuous time in the utility. You've been a calming force, a definite breath of fresh air, looking from a strategic perspective on how to solve the utilities problems and get us out from under the consent administrative order. And I wanted to just tell you, it's been a pleasure to work with you. I'm gonna miss it. I'm still a little, gonna miss our monthly lunches, but hopefully I'll get to come down and visit you in Florida and maybe have lunch with you there on the water. So congratulations in your retirement, and hopefully you'll catch some fish and get some relaxation and do some cruising.
Thank you so much, Director. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We'll now transition to go over the agenda. We do have one modification for today's agenda, which is engineering consulting services contract for the Little Rock landfill. With that, any questions on the consent agenda, 1 through 5? Any questions on the consent agenda, 1 through 5? Any questions on the consent agenda, 1 through 5? Board members, are there any questions on items 6 or 7? Board members, are there any questions on items 6 or 7? Board members, are there any questions on items 6 or 7? We'll now transition to, I want to give the floor to the city attorney to give a legal update on one particular item, and then the city attorney has done a lot of hard work on a resolution for a benefit to the city employees. I want to commend him with that, and he'll give an update on that as well that is budget neutral. City attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. The update deals with the problems that we have had in this city with Greyhound, and I think there's one other company that we need to identify and contact. They do not have a station in Little Rock, and yet they've been selling tickets to Little Rock and basically letting people off at bus stops or other places. The amendment to our ordinances you made a few weeks ago cut off that practice. It continued. I sent a letter on Friday. There was a cease and desist letter. It was copied. I think I copied it to each of you, and I know that I copied it to Rock Region Metro. We have not heard back from it since, but the way that I think our ordinance is written, if they continue in the practice, not only will we issue a citation to the company, we'll also take into arrest the bus driver, and it won't be long, but we'll have to delay him and put him through the process, and he'll have to come back to answer the charge for bringing it here. So hopefully that will get somebody's attention, and we can have more than being ignored. The second item is the memorandum I put out at your desks today. The city has been approached by a company who has the name Aptus Financial. I always kind of wonder where these names come from, but in any event, they are the only one that we have found that is doing a service that will help municipal employees who can qualify for loan forgiveness for all or a portion of student loans because of their work with the city, or there's a hospital that allows it, the military allows it, and so forth. This act about the student loan or public service loan forgiveness program is a federal act. It is not the one that was under review by the U.S. Supreme Court recently. But even though the act has been in place for some period of time, at least during the Trump administration, virtually nothing was happening and denials were being made. Now there's several things that need to be filled out. There is an aspect of the act that expires December the 31st. This contract will cost $50,000. The money will be taken from the savings in the compensation review that's being done in the Human Resources Department. And what will occur are three things. One, the organization will do a survey of all city employees to see how many of them have student loans that could qualify for the forgiveness. Two, they'll help them fill out and submit the right paperwork, and also to get the city to give the right types of verifications that they were working at a particular time and making a certain amount. And then three, keep up with that so that as they go forward, that can help. I can tell you that if you were to ask finance in February, how many months have I done, they would tell you how many years plus 2 months. And then you would have to get additional verification of that in order to get the credit. So this is a savings that could be anticipated if the numbers in Little Rock meet the numbers around the nation of $18 million to our employees. They've got a comment in there, I haven't read the study, but it seems to be rather straightforward, that when you don't have to worry about rent, you can be a much better employee. And so that's sort of what this program is designed to do.
Thank you so much, City Attorney. Members of the board, if there are any, it's pretty self-explanatory, and it's a benefit to our city employees. Again, it's revenue neutral, and this will be placed on next week's board meeting agenda, but wanted to make sure that you all had enough time to see it. If you had any questions, but I know you wanted to know whether or not if it's revenue neutral. It is revenue neutral. And it'll be a great benefit to all of our city employees. Director Webb, Vice Mayor Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's not about what we've been discussing, it's about something else. I wanted to make sure that we saw the article from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette this morning. State Senator seeks repeal of new law limiting local regulation of crypto mining operations. And I know that in Hot Springs last week, they had an ordinance on their agenda to amend their noise ordinance. And I wondered if we had a discussion at City Hall about this issue.
I did not have a discussion with Emily. I will confess it slipped my mind. But it's my understanding that at this point, based on the limited time that I have looked at it, it doesn't have a true impact on the city of Little Rock. But Emily, if you have any comments outside of that.
Thank you, Mayor. We did discuss it at our department director meeting yesterday, and Jamie Collins, who I believe is here and can speak for himself, but he didn't feel it was necessary at this time.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I have one more question about a different subject.
Yes, ma'am.
We've talked for some time about maybe taking a look at some of our code enforcement ordinances. And I know that our code enforcement folks get very frustrated when they get out in the field, and I share that frustration with them. And our residents get frustrated, and sometimes it might be state law, and sometimes it may be we have an outdated ordinance. And a few years ago, Director Hendricks, who was director at the time, she and I both prepared new ordinances, and it was right as COVID was hitting, and then we sort of put them on the table, and I dragged them out this week, and I don't really think they are adequate to put forward the discussion, but I wondered if we could either have a policy discussion, because we have the same people over and in environmental court, and things don't change, and I think we have residents who are getting increasingly frustrated, and I know code officers get very frustrated, and I'm not sure how the best way to proceed is, but it's time for something.
And just for clarification, you're solely speaking to code enforcement from housing neighborhood programs perspective, or both code enforcement from a planning perspective?
Not planning, housing.
Okay. Mr. Moore.
Two things. I sent you all a note, I think the weekend before last, after meeting with Director Howard and Assistant Director Catino, and looking at how how the districts were structured. And we had 5 districts, and the largest district by land mass was West Little Rock. And so we have 4 officers and a supervisor in each district. And I said, well, when is the last time we really have looked at our current districts that are in place? And it's been years. So I did ask Kevin and Brian to come back. I mean, do we have code issues in West Little Rock? We do. But they nowhere compare to wards 1, 2, 6 and 7. So I'm going to redraw the districts to ensure that we have the right staff in place. And then on Friday, you'll get an update memo from me on just, I've been talking about how frustrated I was about the number of court cases. There's 150 court cases that are currently in environmental court going back to 2019.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moore. Director Phillips, then after Director Phillips, if there's no other comments, we'll do some final comments and we'll adjourn. Director Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I wanted to express support for Director Vice Mayor Webb's request for a policy discussion on this issue. I know a few weeks ago we had a policy discussion on some housing issues, and I think at that meeting, the board, I think we discussed that if we're going to have a discussion on this issue as it relates to how we can better protect our tenants in the city of Little Rock, that we need to, there are other people that need to be involved in that discussion. So I don't know if that meeting needs to be in conjunction with Vice Mayor Webb's proposed policy meeting, but I think those things are related, and I would request, I guess, the city manager, if he could go ahead and try to round up the folks that we think needs to be involved, and then see if we can get that meeting scheduled too, so we can continue our work in that regard as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Members of the board, just as a friendly reminder, we'll have our first sales tax working session from 8 o'clock a.m. to 10 a.m. here at the Center at University Park. There will be breakfast served starting at 7:30, breakfast and coffee. And so look forward to seeing you there as we discuss a potential sales tax for the residents of the city of Little Rock, to focus on quality and life in place, as I've shared with many of you in separate informal conversations, centered around 4 Ps, which include parks, public safety, public works, port and the economic development. Again, this will be one of a few or several meetings that we'll have as we continue to make certain there's buy-in with the city board as we pursue this, to make certain we're united. I think it starts by unity here at the city board as we pursue something that truly could be a game changer for the residents of the city of Little Rock. So look forward. Again, it'll be two hours of power, not an hour of power, but 2 hours of power. And we'll try to get another meeting scheduled very shortly thereafter that as well. And again, thank you, City Attorney, for the cease and desist letter and the swift benefit resolution that'll be added to the consent agenda for our residents, for our employees next week. That being said, this meeting is adjourned.